Ah yes, Saturday mornings. That time of the week where kids around the world are glued to the TV and cartoons ruled the airwaves. We have seen a lot of great cartoons and some bad ones, and they came and went. But there was one company that was once the king of Saturday morning cartoons, and that was Hanna-Barbera, the animation company that created some of the most legendary cartoon series for 4 decades. I want to remind you guys that I'm only going to talk about some of the franchises that they made. So I'm not going to individually talk of some Scooby-Doo spin-offs or TV shows with not enough facts or history on them, like Magilla Gorilla or Hong Kong Phooey. So stay tuned, because Animation Lookback is presenting to you Hanna-Barbera. Now let's start in their humble beginnings at Mgm Studios. In the beginning, around the late 30s, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera had one big goal in mind: outbeat the master of family entertainment, Walt Disney. When they first teamed up in MGM, they created their first attempt to do that with the animated short, Puss Gets the Boot. It's about a cat named Jasper who tries to stop this mouse from breaking stuff, or else a big black lady named Mammy will kick Jasper out. When it was shown to the MGM staff, they weren't impressed since they've seen too many cartoons where a cat chases a mouse. And since then, Hanna and Barbera went to work on other MGM shorts. Until the Academy Awards came. It was nominated for Best Animated Short, but lost to The Milky Way, another MGM cartoon. Even though it was just nominated, producer Fred Quimby sees a future in that cat and mouse, and told Hanna and Barbera to make a series out of them. So the first thing they did was to pick some names out of a hat and name the cat and mouse Tom and Jerry. As time would move on, the popularity of Tom and Jerry would become bigger and bigger, until it eventually became the most popular series made by MGM. During the time when Tom and Jerry were with the two men, there were 6 shorts that got nominated and 7 shorts that won an Academy Award, making MGM the first non-Disney company to get this achievement. Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera were on top of the world until the 50s came. At that time, TV is starting to get popular and everybody's getting one. But the box office was really going down, and MGM was trying their best to bring back the bucks. But all failed, and the MGM Cartoon Studio was closed in 1957. 3 years later, Gene Deitch, a Czech animation director of Rembrandt Films, called MGM so he can make more Tom and Jerry shorts. MGM accepted, but 13 shorts later, the audience didn't like it as much as the Hanna-Barbera ones. So they moved to a new owner, Chuck Jones, who made his own studio, Sib Tower 12 Productions, after getting fired from Warner Brothers. The shorts were considered better than Deitch's, but then Jones stopped and moved on to do TV specials and movies in 1967. Then, in 1975, Tom and Jerry returned to their makers in Hanna-Barbera to do some shorts that would tie in with Grape Ape and Mumbly. Ever since, there were more shows made like the Tom and Jerry Comedy Hour and Tom and Jerry Kids, straight to DVD films like The Magic Ring and Blast Off to Mars, and shorts like The Karate Guard. There was even a movie released in 1992 that was a musical.
The greatest gift in life's a friend.
Oh my Jesus, moving on! Ever since the 40s, Tom and Jerry became an icon of cartoons and forever to be known as the original cat and mouse duo. Meanwhile, back in 1957, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera lost their jobs at MGM, so the best way to get one is to make one, by making the HB Enterprises, which is now focused more on television. They actually know their way around TV because they were the ones who anonymously made the ads for I Love Lucy. Anyways, their first show that they aired was The Rough and Ready Show. It's about a talking cat and a talking dog. They go places, Jimmy Blaine is a live-action host, and yeah. During their last year at MGM, Hanna-Barbera tried to convince the executives about this TV show. Now, here's some good news and some bad news. The bad news is that they failed to convince them. The good news, though, is that director George Sidney offered to be their business partner and convinced a studio called Screen Gems to make a deal with them. The deal was Screen Gems would own 20% of HB Enterprises so that they can produce Rough and Ready. A few months after MGM closed down, Screen Gems actually managed to get a lot of MGM animators to work at HB. But by working there comes with a price. A low price. When they worked on Tom and Jerry, the budget for one short is usually around $40,000 to $60,000. But at Screen Gems, they only gave them a budget of $2,700 for 5 minutes of cartoon time. A bad problem? Well, duh! But at least Bill and Joe got two ideas. The first idea that would become their trademark is limited animation. It's to focus more on story and dialogue more than the animation and reduce the number of drawings by 1/10 of the number of drawings they did in Tom and Jerry. The second idea is to have good voiceovers. Since the animation is crappy, they need to balance it with some good voice acting. In Rough and Ready, they asked Doss Butler and Don Messick to do the voice of the main characters. On December 1957, the show was aired on NBC in black and white, but then it turned to color a year later. Rough and Ready would go on until they got cancelled in 1960. They would try to revive the show with the same cartoons, but with a different host 2 years later, but then they canned that too in 1964. In 1958, they released the Huckleberry Hound show. In this show, they featured cartoons of Huckleberry Hound, Pixie and Dixie and Mr. Jinx, and Yogi Bear, which by the way I'll talk about later. And boy was this show an impact! It was Hanna-Barbera's first major hit. The ratings were through the roof, and the show made Hanna-Barbera a household name. In 1960, the show became the first ever animated series to win an Emmy Award. For Bill and Joe, this award actually meant more to them than all the 7 Oscars they got from Tom and Jerry, because it's like their symbol that they made animation specifically for TV a new medium. Also, since Disney doesn't want to do animated TV series because the budget is too small, the two guys found out that they might have a chance to beat Disney in their own game. Ever since the success of Huckleberry Hound, they quickly grew their studio. They even changed their studio name from HB Enterprises to Hanna-Barbera Productions. Also, they got Warren Foster and Michael Maltese, the former storymen of Warner Brothers Cartoons, as the head writers of Hanna-Barbera. After the release of their second big hit, Quick Draw McGraw, Hanna-Barbera Productions is starting to become the leaders of the television animation industry. Now that they're the masters of Saturday morning cartoons, they decided to move to a bigger field, primetime television, and the show that they brought for this field is the Flintstones. The premise is about a family from the Stone Age living like a modern family of today. Well, not really today per se, but still. Originally, the show was supposed to be called the Flagstones, but then they changed it because a comic strip called High and Lois named their characters the Flagstons. And nobody likes to get sued, right? Anyways, the idea of a modern Stone Age family was in the head of Hanna-Barbera for so long, it even stayed before they made Tom and Jerry. The 4 main characters, Fred, Wilma, Barney, and Betty, were all based on the 4 main characters from The Honeymooners, which is why many people think of this as the prehistoric Honeymooners. But maybe it was a bit too similar. One time, Jackie Gleason almost sued Hanna-Barbera for the similarities. But then his friends made him realize that being the man who killed Fred Flintstone is definitely not a good thing. The Flintstones were known to do some stuff that has never before done in an animated series. It was the first to have a story arc by having Wilma pregnant and the birth of Pebbles. Oh, and by the way, a main character pregnant is another first. And the first to have a man and a woman sleep in the same bed. Originally, the kid was supposed to be a boy named Fred Jr., but then he got scrapped. When they made Wilma pregnant, decided to make Wilma pregnant, they decided for the baby to be a girl because of merchandising purposes. During the first 2 seasons, the show was in black and white, and their sponsors were Winston cigarettes. But then when the 3rd season came along, they switched it to color and also switched their sponsor to Welch's. Another change was the theme song to the ever-popular Meet the Flintstones. Throughout the running course, it was legendary! It was the first animated series that got nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Program Achievement in Comedy, and celebrities considered doing a voice in this as like a badge of honor. For a total of 6 years, it became the longest-running animated series ever made. Until The Simpsons broke it, and kept on going. After the show was cancelled, Hanna-Barbera released a movie called The Man Called Flintstone, which is a musical parody of James Bond. Also, they released numerous of revivals and weird spin-offs like Fred Flintstone and Friends, The Flintstones Kids, Fred and Barney Meets the Thing, yes, the Fantastic Four thing, and The Pebbles and Bam Bam Show. Great, they have to make a show about the babies? What's the point of
Damn!
Yeah, what he said. Where was I? Oh yeah! There's also a live-action film of it, and a prequel, which both are, never mind. Today, The Flintstones is considered as one of the greatest animated series of all times, and one of the best works that Hanna-Barbera has ever created. In 1961, Hanna-Barbera released their first spin-off, The Yogi Bear Show. In this show, they featured cartoons of Yogi Bear, Snagglepuss, and Yacky Doodle. Like I mentioned before, Yogi made his debut in the Huckleberry Hound show. But then when they discovered that the Yogi Bear cartoons were actually more popular than those of Huckleberry Hounds', they removed Yogi so that he can have his own show and put Hokey Wolf as Yogi's replacement in the Huckleberry Hound show. Yogi's voice was actually an imitation of Art Carney when he's Ed Norton from The Honeymooners. Heck, they both actually have the same kind of hat. Also, Yogi was named after the legendary New York Yankees catcher Yogi Berra, but Berra himself wasn't much honored. He actually sued Hanna-Barbera for the name, but luckily he lost. Surprisingly, the concept of a hungry bear in Jellystone Park is not really original. The idea came from an animated short called Barney's Hungry Cousin, a Barney Bear cartoon by MGM in 1953. Although the show was a hit, it only ran for 2 seasons and ended on December 30th, 1961. In 1964, Hanna-Barbera released Hey There, It's Yogi Bear, which is the first ever animated film based on an animated series. This animated musical was kinda successful at the box office, but it did get some good reviews, like from Variety. During the 70s and 80s, Yogi would be the host of giant Hanna-Barbera crossover shows, like Yogi's Gang, Yogi's Space Race, and Yogi's Treasure Hunt. And when I meant giant, I didn't mean like it was like a giant hit, no. I meant like they put in every single character they made in one show, like Disney's House of Mouse. Another one of those spin-offs is called Yoyogi, in which Hanna-Barbera characters are now teenagers and solving mysteries. All I can say is, dude, fail. Anyways, they also made an actual Jellystone Park, which is just a simple place to go camping and do activities with Yogi Bear. Actually, they made a lot of Jellystone Parks, most of them set in the east of US and a few in Canada. On December 2010, they released a live-action Yogi Bear movie in which Yogi, voiced by Dan Aykroyd, Boo Boo, voiced by Justin Timberlake, and Cindy, voiced by Christine Taylor, are CG.
way back home.